What's up, y'all? Snipes and Snarflats, your unauthorized place for Disney, Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm. I'm your host, Jason, and we just left Dumbo. This is going to be my first thoughts movie review on Dumbo. It's still fresh in my head. As usual, later on throughout the weekend, I'll put out a more fleshed out one in writing when I really get to let it sink in. But this is my first real thoughts directly coming out of the theater. And first and foremost, while this is not a perfect movie, this is a really, really good family film. I was very impressed by this. Now, there's going to be no spoilers in this as usual, but it's going to be a little borderline this time because the only spoilers I am going to use is when I compare it to the actual animated classic that I'm pretty much sure we've all seen, and if you haven't, you've definitely had a chance to. It's been out for a really long time. But speaking of the animated classic first, this thing pays homage to every single thing you remember in that first animated film. And I think the craziest part about the movie when compared to the animated film is most of the notes, save maybe two, that the first original animated classic hits, this one hits at about the first 30 minutes. And I've been saying since they announced this as a live action film that to me, Dumbo, out of all the Disney classics, is one of the ones that it really doesn't have that much substance to it. So I knew when I saw the people and everything that we were really going to get a lot more fleshed out story added to this. And that's what they do. Now, this film starts off in the beginning, and honestly, the first 30 minutes could kind of come off as a little slow, and it's mainly because it really just deals with so much loss. I mean, from the time this film opens, you've got a circus that by the end of the credits is in loss. You immediately meet these kids who have lost their mom and they're waiting for their dad to come home from the war, and he's lost an arm. So I mean, it's just loss after loss after loss because the circus of the Medici brothers that Danny DeVito himself is the ringmaster and owner of, it's gone into shambles. And you really get to see he's bought this elephant that comes off as sick, which you know her as Mother Jumbo, and that's her introduction here. And then he's banking everything on this baby, really going to turn everyone around and bring them to his circus. And when the baby's born, obviously he gets ridiculed as usual, as you see in the film. I don't see why, because even when I was a kid, I always thought little Dumbo was just so adorable that just based on how adorable he is, you could really get people to come to the circus based on that, I would think. But they think he's a freak, big-eared freak. And I mean, it really plays on that in the first 30 minutes or so. Like I said, it hits all the real notes of the animated classic in the first 30 minutes. The mad elephant scene's great. I mean, everything is in there that you remember. Even the storks, just all of that stuff's in there. It hits all those notes. It pays homage to the original mouse, like everything. And I really dug how this paid homage without basically being like, look at this, it's from the cartoon. Like, they really fought that urge to do that. And like I said, this movie's not perfect. There was a couple moments that the CGI was a little off, especially in the beginning in the circus. There was a couple parts that really took me out that I wasn't buying. And I actually got a little worried in that first 30 minutes because I didn't know how this was going to go. But the second Dumbo takes flight, this movie really, I mean, that's the closest thing to seeing that was probably seeing Christopher Reeves for the first time as Superman take flight. Because, I mean, it really is just a magical moment. I think Michael Keaton said it in the film best. You made me a kid again, and that's exactly what happens throughout a lot of this film. You feel like you're a kid again. It's definitely is that Disney, some people won't like it because it's that Disney predictability almost, for lack of words. But, I mean, I think it's more that just Disney wholesomeness, and that it captures all of that there. Once again, not perfect, but a really, really good movie. And when I say not perfect, it's mainly because of some of the predictabilityness, a little of the CGI is a little wonky. But, I mean, other than that, this movie, to me, it flew great. I loved this movie when it really comes down to it and I really think about it. And some of the real high notes for me in this movie were the performances. You get a great performance out of Danny DeVito. It's a down on his luck, just kind of shyster carnival who will do anything just to keep his carnival and his people going. And he's really just, you feel that he's at his wit's end here. The family part, it's played as good as it can be. I mean, Colin Farrell does great as the dad who's got lost. The kids, they weren't great, but they held their own. And it was crazy to me how Dumbo being CGI, they still kind of made Dumbo the real star of this movie. They found a way to really make Dumbo the star. And like I said, when he flies, the movie soars. Michael Keaton was amazing in his part. He plays kind of like an anti-Walt Disney. Like, I mean, it's what Walt would have been if all the naysayers that really talk bad about him were right, and that's what he was. Because, I mean, this is the guy who, I can create your dreams, but at the same time, I'm only doing it for a buck, and I'm only doing it to stay in control, and money in the bottom line is the only really thing that matters. But he hides it under this wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm doing this for you, guys. He really is that typical rich person who throws around his money to get whatever he wants, but he does it in the name of philanthropy, even though that means nothing to him at all. He does it in the name of, I'm helping you, even though he's only helping you to help himself. And the second he can turn on you and cut the strings, he's going to do that. And he plays this role perfectly. He is great in this role. I just, from the whole turn, I loved Michael Keaton. I think performance-wise, out of everybody in the movie, he just really brought it. Another real thing that really struck me in this movie, and it's funny because when it comes to Tim Burton, I've always said Tim Burton usually has got a real heavy thumbprint on his movies. Like, you can look at a movie and say, that's Tim Burton, with exceptions. Those exceptions are usually my favorite Tim Burton movies. And this one falls under those exceptions. You could watch this, and if no one told you it was a Tim Burton movie, you probably would not even know it was a Tim Burton movie. And I think that's where Tim Burton really shines. And this was no exception. This movie was great. From the time they get, like I said, they go through the first motions of the actual cartoon in the first 30 minutes. After that, the only other thing they really pay homage to is the pink elephant scene. And the pink elephant scene is amazingly handled. I loved it. I had been questioning how they were going to pull that off from the time this movie got announced, and the way they do it is not only beautiful, it is just so just enchanting to watch. Like, you're just mesmerized while you're watching it. And other than that, though, the last, like, probably hour of the movie, once you get out of that 30 minutes or so, the next hour, hour and a half, is all original. It's all Burton and whoever helped write this. This was all original story, and that's honestly where this movie shined the most story-wise, because the actual story beyond what you've seen in the cartoon, like I said, it's where the shine. This is where this movie really took off and soared for just to play the Dumbo route. But this movie really soared here in its new story, and its new story was dealing with, like I said, he gets basically, he tells them he'll give them the life they've always wanted, and that's how he gets his clutches on Dumbo. And you get to see how people can really manipulate an entertainment situation. I really thought about actors and actresses and how sometimes, like, even musicians, really, they can get manipulated into thinking they're getting this great life, and really there's a whole lot of strings attached to it. And that's kind of what the story they're telling in on this. And like I said, I loved Dreamland. Like, they take him to Dreamland, and Dreamland is basically, I compared him to an anti-Walt. Well, this is like an anti-Disney. This thing takes back in like the early 1900s. So this is like a steampunk vision of Disney World, basically, is what this guy's built. And it is amazing. Like, this to me is where, like I said, in this last period is where the movie shines the hardest, because Dreamland is just gorgeous. And you've seen the massive set pieces from behind the scenes. You see all the extras they brought in, and they're all to just bring this Dreamland to life. And I thought that was really where all the magic lied in this movie, was Dreamland. From the time we got there, this movie went from here to here. for me, and it never went back. Like, it just stayed right on that top tier. So like I said, if the first 30 minutes was slow, the next hour and an hour and a half was just gorgeous. I mean, like I said, the Dreamland sets were gorgeous. The storytelling was just great, even if it was a little cliche at times. I really enjoyed myself watching this movie. This is a must-see for any Disney fan, a must-see for any fan of Dumbo, a must-see for any fans of the circus and fantasy and your Disney worlds and theme parks and stuff like that. Like I said, I saw this at the Dolby, so I saw this as big as possible. And once they got there to Dreamland, I've got to admit, I would not recommend anybody to not see this on a big grand scale such as that. Very beautiful movie. Like I said, I would recommend this to anyone to go see it. Take your whole family. Your kids will love this. First 30 minutes, real tearjerker material, but then those tears will eventually turn to happy tears, I promise, much like the original classic did. This is going to hit you right in the feels if you just love Dumbo. And if you even liked Dumbo, this builds on it so much that I'd almost say watch this even before you watch the classic again, because it just builds on it that much. So that's all I'm really going to say. Those are my real first thoughts for the film. Like I said, I'm going to let it resonate over a couple days. Keep looking on the website. I will post that up as soon as I really get it written out and think about it and really break it down piece by piece, actor by actor, scene by scene. Once again, still no spoilers, but check down there in the description. That's the link to the website. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, also down there, and that's when you can find out and help exactly when that goes up. While you're down there, hit the subscribe button and the bell for more. We've got a lot of movies coming month for month. We've also got the weekly show that happens that sums up everything in the realm of entertainment for Marvel, Pixar, Disney, Lucasfilm, all that good stuff. So go down there, check those things out, hit subscribe, hit the bell, and until then, I've seen a house fly. I seen a shoe fly. I seen a needle that winked its eye. But I'd be done seeing about everything when I see a elephant fly.